and welcome to the Art of Costume podcast. I'm Elizabeth Joy Glass.
And I am General Acacius Gluteus Maximus Spencer Williams.
I enjoy the Gluteus Maximus part of your title.
Oh my gosh, what's up, Elizabeth? It's so good to see you. Elizabeth is in my living room right now.
I am.
So this is our first time in a living room couch. Because Elizabeth has officially moved into Los Angeles as of 2 hours ago.
Yes.
So we're taking a break from moving right now. So if our audio feels a little wonky today, that's because it literally is, where she just unpacked her microphone. So, you know, we're going to get this situated in a couple weeks here.
Yeah. We're working on the whole 2 audios, 1 room, but Daniel will let us know what to do.
Yeah. But Elizabeth, the movie theaters have been swamped the past couple weeks because what did we just see?
Well, I participated in Glickid. But more importantly for today, we saw Gladiator II.
We did, and I've seen it twice now. I love this movie.
I want to see it again. I honestly love how good Ridley Scott is at historical fan fiction.
Yeah.
Like he really excels at it, I feel.
Historical fan fiction is such a good way to put it. Let's get into it because we have a lot to cover. This is actually a pretty massive episode, all things considering. I'm just going to get into it with a summary if you don't mind.
Yes.
Gladiator 2 is, of course, directed by one of the greats, Ridley Scott. And in Gladiator 2, after his home is conquered by the twin tyrannical emperors who now lead Rome, and years after witnessing the death of Maximus at the hands of his uncle, Lucius must enter the Colosseum. With rage in his heart and the future of the empire at stake, he looks to the past to find the strength and honor needed to return the glory of Rome to its people. And that is Gladiator 2.
That is Gladiator 2. If you haven't seen it, get ye to a movie theater.
I'm all about conformity. Go to the movie theaters.
In the meantime, let's meet our costume designers, Janty Yates and David Crossman. You will know Janty Yates for her Oscar-winning film Gladiator, Miami Vice, American Gangster, Prometheus, Exodus, Gods and Kings, The Martian, for which she received a Costume Designer Guild nomination, Alien Covenant, The Last Duel, House of Gucci, for which she received a Costume Designer Guild nomination, and most recently, Napoleon, for which she received an Oscar nomination. You will know David's work from Rogue One, a Star Wars story, for which he received a Costume Designer Guild nomination, Solo, a Star Wars story, 1917, The Batman, for which he created the bat suit, and also Napoleon, for which he shared an Oscar nomination with Janty Yates.
Yeah, and we actually do have an episode with Janty Yates and David Crossman talking about the costumes of Napoleon. That was late last year, season 3. So check it out. It was a fun one. I was so nervous in that one because, I mean, Janty Yates has done some of the greatest films, Gladiator, and you know how I feel about Prometheus and Alien Covenant.
Oh, yeah. She's designed some of your favorite films.
Mm-hmm. And David Crossman is such a talented craftsman.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I could go on and on about David. He's just such a nerd about all things military costumes, and I totally respect the hell out of him for that.
Oh, yeah.
Elizabeth, I have a great surprise for you. I mean, it's not really a surprise for you, but perhaps for the listeners. I actually got to spend some time with Janty Yates and David Crossman to talk about the costumes of Gladiator 2. I had a lot of fun. Wasn't as nervous this time since we literally just interviewed them almost a year to the day to talk about Napoleon. And yeah, I mean, there was so much to talk about, from everything from the old Maximus armor reappearing in Gladiator 2 to, of course, dressing Pedro Pascal, which I tried not to ask too many questions about, but, you know, they were all in the back of my mind. Working with Denzel Washington and those pesky Emperor twins, which look so crazy. And, of course, both of them, Janty Yates and David Crossman, are master researchers. So And without further ado, let's play my interview with the two of them. And I believe if you watch on YouTube, we actually even have the video of the conversation as well,
Ooh.
since the two of them were on a very fancy junket set and I was in my living room and I was not expecting that. So you could watch that play out as well. Let's hit it.
Hi, I'm Dan, who does all the magic behind the scenes. I wanted to say thank you, and if you want to support the show even farther, go to tpublic.com/user/theartofcostume, where you can buy a couple variations of our logo on t-shirts, mugs, and stickers. Also, be sure to leave a like, comment, and subscribe, and if you're an audio listener, leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcast. Now, back to the show.
I'm so happy to welcome back to the podcast for a second time, Janty Yates and David Crossman. Hello, you two. It's been almost a year to the day where we were talking about Napoleon, so you two must be busy, it seems.
Well, I'm very lucky to be working with Dave again. I can tell you that.
Yeah.
Very kind words from Janty.
I love it. Well, let's get into it. So I have a lot of questions. This is years in the making. So I'll start with the most obvious one. Obviously, Janty, you won the Academy Award for Gladiator the first time around. So you obviously been working with Ridley Scott for all these years. Did you kind of just see this coming one day, just kind of looking at things in museums and being like, oh, one day I might come back to this for Gladiator?
I had no idea. I thought, well, no way after 24 years are we going to go back to this. And I really didn't believe it when it started to be rumoured. And I thought, oh, that'll never happen.
Really?
And I do look at things in museums and think, well, I wish we were going back to that.
Well, to your surprise, here we are. So I actually want to read a little quote from you, Janty, that made me laugh hysterically. You said, I have been in space 3 times since Gladiator and done all sorts of periods, which couldn't be more true, especially when you're thinking about films like Prometheus. So regarding the research for Gladiator and Rome, did you feel like you needed a refresher, or were you just ready to go right as we get back into it?
No way was I ready to go. I had to really start from the beginning completely again and go to all those museums, get all those huge books that Ridley loves, go to Rome, wander through the statues again. I just had to do a complete restart, really.
And David, I want to bring you in here, especially as our expert on military costumes. So how did you prepare yourself for this sort of epic Herculean task?
It was always a period I thought I'd never enjoy, but I really enjoyed it in the end. Once I started researching and looking into it and then just trying to find the sort of coolest looks that I could. I was working on another job at the time, so we were kind of doing it from London, and then the first worry is about making all the art, the amounts of it. That's one of your first worries. And I think one of the things Janty and I did first was get Gianpaolo Grassi, this leather specialist, to get on the job so that he could make us some of our principal armour.
Genius.
Because he's a kind of amazing maker, and then just working out how we were going to do it and blending sort of modern techniques along with Janty's kind of traditional leather techniques. But in the end, I loved it. I loved the research. It was really good. And we were modelling Roman helmets on the computer, and it was good fun.
So before, like you just mentioned, there's a lot of pieces that go into this. So before we get into the specific characters, I really want to give the both of you a chance to talk about your collaboration with each other. But then also, you must have had an epic crew to pull this off, because there is a infinite amount of costumes in this film. So how did that look this time around?
We actually went about it in completely separate ways, didn't we? Dave had to be very involved in the armour making. He'll tell you about that. We were just with the stitchers and the jewellers and the special effects costumers, who I stole from David occasionally. But I do have a wonderful team. I had the cutter of my dreams, Dominic Young. I have my ACD, who helped so much, Melissa Moritz. And basically, with a huge slew of brilliant seamstresses and makers and buyers, I felt very, very fortunate.
And David, what did your crew look like?
I just did it completely alone. And same as Janty, you rely on your kind of main assistant. My main assistant was Stella Atkinson. We had a great cutter called Jenny Alford. And so Janty and I kind of split the cast essentially because Paul and Pedro were just basically, in military for most of the film. So we just kind of separated at that point. And then we had a great costume team who were trying to wrangle everything coming into Morocco and trying to pre-fit hundreds of crowd for the beginning of the shoot. We were making armor kind of all over the world, really, in Weta in New Zealand, in Budapest, in London. So it all had to get to Morocco for a certain point. Ian Jones, who's one of our special effects costume makers, who both me and Janty use, and he was making all the special pieces for Gladiators.
I think I just called him Ian Smith.
Sorry.
Smith Jones.
But Janty and I know each other very well. We worked together loads of times over the past 24 years or so. Wow. So we know each other very well. So we just kind of get on with it. It's an easy relationship.
So let's get into the specifics of of this film. So David, a shocking fact I learned leading up to this, doing some research, and I didn't really realize that there was over 24 distinct types of gladiators that existed in Rome, and many of them were represented in the film, of course. So could you talk about the different types of gladiators and how you were able to make those distinctions?
Yes, you get a lot of the information from the existing mosaics, actually. That's where a lot of original research for gladiators comes from. Because there's a lot of depictions. There's about 5 or 6 that are the most commonly used. And of course, I can't remember the names of any of them. They've all got a very particular Latin name. But they all essentially have, they're all trained in certain roles and to use certain weapons. So you can spot the type of gladiator by the type of weapon that person is holding and the type of helmet that person is wearing and all of that kind of thing. But that's the kind of rules that we're aware of. I mean, it's because they're trained in certain types of fighting so that you can arrange fights in the Colosseum, just so it's not just a complete free-for-all, I suppose.
Ooh, so excited. I'm excited to go back and see it again so I could just kind of pick out the different gladiators. Janty, I want to go back to you. Let's talk about some specific characters, starting with Macrinus, played by the Denzel Washington. I particularly love his costumes because I believe there's a lot of context clues in this character. If you look at his costumes, he's very sophisticated. He knows how to rise in society without being too over the top. So did you feel that same way when you were designing the costumes for this character? Was there kind of like some subliminal messaging in how we see his rise to the top, which, doesn't work out so well?
Well, absolutely. We created an arc for him, and he starts off in the provinces with the smaller Colosseum there with the baboon fight. And yet I had him very much downplayed in darker colours with embroidery, but not, the embroidery that we used later on. And I was watching it at the English premiere and I thought, how come you look so bloody gorgeous? And in his close-up, he looked magnificent. And I thought, you're not doing the costumes any help. You're still looking wonderful and looking very, spectacular and full of authority. And then we got more and more embroidery and in his wraps and his throws. And a lot of those are 1900s. They're 1920s wraps encrusted in jewels, some embroidery with some others that I bought from the Marché aux Puces in Paris, the flea market there. There are 2 wonderful outlets that have the most beautiful, incredibly expensive, eye-watering, but we got them for him. And also in Milan, there's a specific supplier of ancient Indian embroidery as well. And so we got him more and more ornate as he gets more and more ambitious. And then at the top, he levels out, really. He's just wearing beautiful silks with beautiful trim, but not as ornate as he was during his passage through Rome. And so the last 2 outfits were simpler. Simple elegance.
because he's at the top now. But then when we come to the twin emperors, they're maybe a little bit not as simple, elegant. Maybe it's over the top elegance. So let's talk about these twins. They're less than subtle. So I would like to hear a little bit about your collaboration with these fantastic actors, but also hair and makeup as well. This felt like a team effort to make these characters feel, for lack of a better word, batshit crazy.
Batshit crazy. That's such a good expression. Well, Ridley's brief, it's always Ridley's brief that starts us off. We just facilitate. He wanted Johnny Rotten. He wanted Johnny Rotten to be their exact image. So the red hair, the white face. I didn't realize Yana was going quite so white, but I think it works very well with the eye makeup. And always a missing tooth or a gold tooth. I think one has one and the other hasn't. I'm not sure. And then sort of for costume, the boys in their first fitting were completely gobsmacked. They would just go, Christ, another layer? What you want? And then you want that? And then this? And then we were putting the biggest fibulae you could find in the world on them, and earrings, strange earrings. And it was so much fun dressing them. They were adorable and divine to do. And I think that gave them a bit of a hook, the fact that they were so over the top in their costume.
Yeah, I feel it really played to the story. So David, going back to some other characters, Paul Mescal plays Lucius, who is kind of our guiding light throughout the story. And unfortunately for him, he's in a lot of armor. He doesn't really get any downtime. So compared to the armor of the more established gladiators, I feel like his is a little bit more subtle in the sense that you could tell maybe it's handed down. So I was asking you a little bit about that arc we see in his armor before we get to, of course, the big reveal of his final armor.
I mean, basically, virtually all gladiators would probably have their armor handed down. It would all be kind of used, right, previously. The thing with Paul is he starts out with his kind of woven armor in Numidia, and then Ridley wanted him to go into. At first, he wanted him in pale armor at the beginning as a kind of a reference that he'd seen in a Pasolini film. Then we did him his green set, which is based towards Macrinus's colours of his livery and his guards. So that became Paul's kind of main kind of midsection. And the gladiators don't really wear cuirasses like that, to be honest. It's like it's kind of the language of the first film that informs that. So you're trying to make him look. It's an heroic look for him, and of course it's a muscle cuirass. It's very flattering, so it's always going to look good, and you can use it kind of in every stage or fight that Paul ends up doing. So it started off life as this brown cuirass, and then layers of green were worked into it, and then we put the Macrinus crest on it, and. Yes, it's supposed to have been worn by, a dozen other people before him. It's an old green, cuirass thrown to him.
Right. And I feel like you could definitely see that in the aging and breakdown of the costume as well. You could tell that's gone through.
It's all made for Paul, and it's fitted within an inch of its life. But but yes, it's also aged to a.
Which we appreciate that. I've been dying to ask this question, actually. It's kind of for both of you. At the end, we see Lucius take up the famous armor of Maximus, which was kind of a big callback to the first film. So, Janty, for you, what was it like seeing this armor on a big screen again?
Well, I was really thrilled that they did use it, because I couldn't actually think how you could get away with it, but it's seamless in the film. I mean, Wyatt's hanging there on the wall when Macrinus's name is shut out, but, it's scratched out. But I guess it was a beautiful piece of armor. They wanted to display it. So, we got away with that. And the fact that he wore it is, to me, it was very heartwarming, because Russell had really worked on that armor. He'd said, every time I win a Colosseum battle, I want to add, I've got the money to buy a bit of silver, and I want to add to the cuirass. And actually, if you look at the first Gladiator, you'll see he had his horses, but the tree grows, the cedar in the center grows, and then he adds his wife and adds his son. So they're all added, but you wouldn't have been aware of that, I'm sure, in the first one. So it was really lovely to see it making another appearance.
Yes, we're so excited. And then David bringing out this piece. I mean, I'm guessing you didn't just whip this out of a box or anything. We had to rebuild this, I'm assuming.
Yeah, we tracked down an original somewhere near Watford, outside London, in Boston. And then then we scanned, and then we remodeled the horses, the tree, the wife and child, the goddess with the laurels, and there's a couple of griffins, I think, on the bottom with a little bit of scroll work. And so we made those because we had Janty this time around. He then made a black leather kind of base for it, and then we made the pieces as kind of individual pieces, and then so hence recreating it. And then he wore it with his existing skirt, so he was just putting the breastplate on in the film. So it's a kind of mixture of the two. The colours just about went together okay. Just so he wasn't pulling the whole thing off the wall and putting everything on.
I have to say, Gianpaolo Grazzi was a major star in our firmament, wasn't he? He is the best. He and his wife are the best.
Well, it was a big moment for costume nerds like me to see that armor come back onto the big screen. We're all very excited.
Well, I think it really affected the look, having the real leather in use. I think the leather makes such a big difference, because 9 films out of 10 you'd make that stuff in polyurethane and plastic and fiberglass, so having the leather elements, they're more comfortable for the actors. They love fighting in it, and you can just add the elements to it, and it gives you a nice time. It gives it all a nice quality, I think.
Right. Let's take a break from some of our main characters for a little bit and talk about extras. In my notes, I read that there was about 500 extras that were brought into the crowded Colosseum. Janty, I mean, I can't even wrap my brain around having that many people in that space, and I'm sure more were added in digitally. But how does your crew handle so many extras?
Well, that was nothing. I mean, Gladiator 1, we had 3,000.
Oh, okay. Well,
this is easy
just another
peasy. Day. We weren't getting up at 2 or starting work actually at 2. We did in Gladiator 1 in Morocco and in Malta, but where we shot all of Rome. But basically, Stefano Donadis was my assistant costume designer in Morocco. He did all these wonderful, wonderful Numidian crowds. He made headdresses, glorious outfits. And do we see them? Hardly at all. Anyway, that's in the Colosseum. You see a lot more, and we were blessed with wonderful costumes from Peruzzi, which is Costume dell'Arte in Rome, and a lot of other costume houses had some very, very good, wonderful costumes. We were able to put them together, and Claudia Mance is my wardrobe supervisor, if you like, for the crowd, and they did it easily.
With no problems.
They did it easily. So 500 was a lot, of course, but nothing compared to Dave's big days. They were very big days with the Praetorians and gladiators and the Roman army.
Yeah, which, David, that's going to be my next question. That army scene at the end. Can you talk about the Roman armies and how they might compare to the Numidian army as well?
We did a kind of a varied mix of helmets that would have existed at the time, things that may have found their way to that part of Africa, to the coast of Africa. So there's a big mixture of helmets that exist in antiquity. So we remade, they're called Phrygian helmets, or there was various styles. We made about 4 or 5 styles and then mixed them all together, and some of them had horsehair plumes, and so they're meant to be a lot more ragtag as compared with the invading Roman army is a lot more together and a lot more powerful, and obviously you can see that there's money there, and they're coming. This might is coming against these poor Numidians. So I mean, the Romans you'll see are all kind of one color, really. The armor's all one thing, and it's all very unified and very, so you just feel the organization. And you'll see this special molded chainmail that Pier Bohanna made for us, because most Roman soldiers wore chainmail, weirdly, rather than the plate armor.
Oh,
so
interesting.
You'll see as much of that as we could produce in time for the film mixed in, and then So there's sort of two types, and then there's scale armor, which we also made for mounted for horsemen, so they've got different styles of helmets. So the Romans just have more organization in their kind of DNA, and the Numidians are kind of anything, mixture of all sorts.
David, like the rest of the world, I'm a big fan of Pedro Pascal, who plays Marcus Acacius in Gladiator II, who is highly decorated warrior, and his armor had a more exquisite feeling, I would say, compared to many of the other people around him. Of course, they all look great, but you could tell that he's the guy in charge. So tell me about working with Pedro and these costumes and fittings and how you made him feel like this statuesque warrior.
We had some very nice fittings with Pedro. He arrived. We'd done a kind of basic fitting in LA with him. Stella had gone out to get some basic shapes on him. We saw him first properly in Morocco, where we fitted his battle armor. We modeled, our digital modeler, Sam, had made that lovely Medusa head with the kind of exaggerated serpents, which is very hard to apply to the leather cuirass. So Janty had made this beautiful, very dark, kind of bronzy, almost black cuirass. It was supposed to have a kind of metallic quality to it. And then in the meantime, we were embroidering capes and tunics for Pedro for his other scenes when he's with Connie and when he's with, so we were getting those done at the same time. And no, he was great. I mean, he's so, I don't know, he's so good looking, isn't he? You can't really go wrong. It's all about, what they're prepared to show leg-wise, arm-wise. They've got their particular things that they don't mind showing and they don't want to see. And so we'll try and make them happy in the sort of lengths of their skirts and how much leg they're showing, all that kind of thing.
Right.
And but no, Pedro is great. He was fantastic. He had that cape on at the beginning of the film when he's on the boats having his kind of morning coffee before the battle starts. And then I was worried because he has to lose it. And so it was so thick and heavy, the only way we could do it was him flipping it off, which I thought was going to look terrible, but it actually looked fine in the film. It all makes sense. Really so that was a relief. He does that typical actor thing of putting a helmet on for less than a minute, 30 seconds. Right. The problem with actors and helmets in films, you lose the identity. You've always got to keep the identity of those characters. So it's more important that you see who's doing what. So a lot of the time you'll see lots of actors with no helmets on, and that's the, I'm afraid that's the law sometimes.
Yeah, that's the rule.
Trying to find the perfect ratio of costume and actor screen time.
There's no way Paul Mescal would have a helmet. I don't think we even considered Paul having his helmet in his Numidian armor. He just had the woven armor. And he looked lovely in that, and he looked kind of, simple enough and rustic enough, without, so we didn't need to put a helmet on.
It always makes you wonder, too, when there's arrows flying by. Like, they want to protect your face, but their faces are so beautiful. So what can you do?
So we had the same in Gladiator I. So he wears it for 30 seconds in the beginning of the whole film, and then it's gone.
Gotcha. Yeah, it is what it is, but I guess we're all appreciative of it. Janty, Lucilla makes a return to the film, and she looks as elegant as ever. And I felt like there's almost like a goddess feeling to her, because the way that the fabrics and textiles really flow on her, she looks elegant. So I was going to ask you, working with her and creating those fabrics, those textiles, and just creating that drape on her was just so elegant and beautiful.
She's just a joy to dress. You could literally hang a piece of fabric from each shoulder. And she was doing this herself in one of our fittings. And she was going, well, why can't I do this? And we went, oh, all right.
Go for it.
So she's very participatory, and we love that. But we did start out thinking that she was 24 years older, that basically my cutter and I thought we'd make her more classic. So we went haute couture very much on her, sort of like 30s, 40s haute couture, much simpler. And we went over and we did the first fitting with her. And she didn't say anything, but Ridley didn't like it. I didn't like it. And it turned out she wasn't that mad about it. So we started attaching veils from here, there, and everywhere, embroidering, adding jewels, and, just layering up with other fabrics. And so we completely threw that concept out of the window. And she just does look wonderful, but she does do it herself.
It kind of reminds me of like some Halston looks maybe as well.
Well,
too,
that's
right?
where we were going in the start, actually, with a sort of slight Halston, but going back to Madame Grey and going, all the way back. We were taking them from everywhere, but that's very good that that survived.
Yeah, it's there a little bit. We're almost at the end here, but before I let you both go, I would love to talk about the breakdown of these costumes as well. Of course, David, we see a lot of action, a lot of war, a lot of stunts, fires. But then Janty, we also see some characters working in fields and, helping keep some of these gladiator pits, I don't know, going, whatever employees were doing back then. So tell me, the both of you, a little bit about the breakdown.
Well, you rely on your breakdown department more than there's nothing worse than bad aging and breakdown. We had Michael, who did
Michael McNamara, amazing.
Michael McNamara, who did such a great
amazing
job.
And he also printed a lot of my bejeweled and embroidered stuff because Denzel wanted 4.
That's the thing. You'll get to 1, and then you'll break 1 down. Then there's another 6 to do, which is one of the kind of most monotonous things about breakdown is having to do all the repeats. It's really time consuming, but it's all needed and
it's essential.
Same thing with the crowd. You just do it in a different process. It's more of a mass process, but everything. Every Roman was made. All the sandals, all the under tunics, everything was made. All of that was made in Morocco, so it all went through a kind of mass process of just quick aging, just so it looks roughly the part. And the things you're going to see more, they all get something. So it's a huge operation. In Morocco, he had about 20 people working with him, didn't he? And at the Moroccan end of things, and then we had a Maltese crew working with him in Malta, but slightly less by them because we just didn't have as many people in Malta. But
it's so essential, breakdown. We can't work without them. We really can't. Especially when you're making always from new. You need that aging. You need those seams worn in. It's terribly time consuming. But you need, even on just garments, you need seams worn in. You need them, to look as if they're not just popped off the seamstress's table.
Yeah, I think nothing ruins a film or TV show faster than a costume that looks brand new. Like it's, a Halloween costume or anything. That will take me out of it real quickly. So
exactly.
Yeah.
And Ridley always loves to make his pictures, his actual frames, to look like an old master of some sort or other. And so you have to have breakdown. You can't have bright whites, bright pinks. You can't have anything like that. You have to brown everything.
Yeah. Well, this has been such a joy. I'm so glad I got to talk to the two of you again. The Gladiator 2 is about to hit theaters, and everyone's, I'm sure, going to be stampeding into movie theaters across the world. So what do the both of you hope that audiences take away from this film?
Well, for me, I just hope they love it like they loved the first one. I think it's a brilliant film. I think it's so clever, and I hope they enjoy it, really. That's the main thing.
Same here. You just want people to enjoy themselves, and I hope Ridley gets some kind of appreciation for it, and I hope it's very well put together, I think. So I think they've done a very good job with it. So you just want people to like it, to be well received.
Yeah, it is entirely epic, and I can't thank the both of you enough. It was so much fun, and I hope everyone runs to theaters and see it. Thank you so much, costume designer Janty Yates and David Crossman. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Spencer, that was incredible.
They're just legends, and obviously I think they're going to get nominated for another Oscar 2 years in a row.
I'd be shocked if they weren't.
I would be shocked almost if they didn't win. Honestly. Yeah. They're just so the scale of this film is really quite incredible. And the fact that she even said that the scale almost felt even more pared down compared to the first one. It's, to me, I'm like, well, that didn't show because it felt quite epic.
I will say, because I with the, what were they, baboons? The first.
I did not appreciate that scene. That was scary.
I was so uncomfortable. I was like, and then he bit it and I was like,
insane.
It's wild. It was wild.
But the scale of the armor too. I mean, David Crossman, I just think
beautiful.
And the fact that there were so many different types of gladiators, the amount of research that most people, normal people who don't listen to Acacius podcast, won't even realize like the amount of different gladiators they had in it. But it's insane. Elizabeth, let's get to some serious business. What was your stitch rating for Gladiator 2?
Okay. My stitch rating is a 4.
Okay.
It's a solid 4.
That feels right.
Because I feel like it went a little bit too much along the lines of the first film story-wise. There were a lot of similarities. Story-wise, it was a little shaky. I did like that Pedro Pascal wasn't the ultimate bad guy. Wrong side of history, but not the ultimate bad guy of the movie. And so I liked that they kind of like finished mirroring the first movie pretty early on, within the first third of the film.
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, can I admit something too? I actually watched the first Gladiator film after I saw the second one. It was my first time. I know, which is insane. I did not share that with Janty and David. I watched it before I interviewed them. And I almost enjoyed the second one more, to me. I'm not a big Russell Crowe fan, but the first film is fantastic. It is fantastic because the scale of it, the storytelling is great. I also just checked my letterbox while we were talking, and I gave this film a solid 4 stars. 4 stitches.
4 stitches, yes.
Well. Because I felt like it was kind of lacking on the story in a sense that I didn't feel emotionally connected literally to any characters, but that's probably my bad for not seeing the first film. So if everyone's shaking their heads, I'm sorry. But to me, like, I love to watch just a bunch of grown men with swords fight. Yes. I love the visual spectacle. Like, I really love the shark scene. I know it's over the top. And I did do some research, and they actually did fill the Colosseum with water. Yeah. They just didn't have, great white sharks or whatever. But like, I just love the visual spectacle. Like, I was like watching it. Cinema is so back, I was just in the movies. I was like, this is kick ass. Like, let's fight.
I have heard some like not so great reviews of it. And I think a big part of it is if you don't know Roman history, like, it's very hard to understand a lot of this film. And like I said in the beginning, Ridley Scott does such a good job at historical fan fiction.
It was insane. But what was not up for debate was that the costumes were top tier. So let's play our favorite game. Let's just jump into it.
Daniel, hit it.
The one costume to rule them all.
What was your one costume to rule them all? I have a feeling we're very aligned on this.
I think we are. My one costume to rule them all is the white and gold armor that Pedro Pascal wears to the Colosseum on the first day of the games.
Oof.
It's like so what Rome thought they were. Like the pageantry, the like, ooh, look at this brave warrior. But it's such a contrast to who General Acacius is. So I like that it just looks awkward on him and just out of place for his character. But it is perfect for the setting of the Colosseum and like the celebrations and games that are going on for him. Yeah,
no, this is a good choice. This was my second pick, actually, because he just looks like a little angel. Pedro Pascal is all white. I mean, might as well be like a little halo over his head.
I'm like, this is my favorite girl, Pedro Pascal.
Yeah. But I had to go with General Acacius's armor he wears to Numidia. I thought he looked sick, but I love the Medusa engraving on his breastplate. That to me, I was like, ooh, I want that armor. It's cool, it's slick, it's black. He looks good. He's all dirtied up. The aging and dying of all the armor was fantastic.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
It felt like, it looked like he actually went to war by the end of it. You see him having coffee on the boat and he looks...
Oh, his wine and bread.
Ooh, yeah, that's our LA breakfast.
Yes, I do love how they like presented him because like He looked so good. He looked so good in this movie, Spencer.
Elizabeth, this was such a fun episode, and we have even more fun stuff planned. Shall we let everyone know what we have going on?
Yes.
Our audience request.
Absolutely. As our gift for the holidays to you all, we let you pick out our next episode. And by popular demand, in 2 weeks, we will be talking about the Aiko Ishioka classic, The Fall.
I am so excited. Actually, the amount of times I've been emailed about us watching The Fall is actually quite insane.
Yeah.
So, of course, when we did this audience request holiday gift, I was like, I bet you it's going to be The Fall or The Cell.
Exactly.
And
exactly
sure enough,
what it was.
it's The Fall. I'm very excited. It's an Ishioka classic. I've seen a few pictures. Oh, when I picked up Elizabeth today, when I was telling her what our film was going to be, literally we're driving in to talk about Gladiator. I was like, just so you know, the lead actor is Lee Pace also. And she was very easily sold. There was no debate.
No, I already knew that. And he was like one of my crushes growing up from Pushing Daisies.
Yeah,
I was
going to
all
say, shout
in.
out to Pushing Daisies. If you guys haven't listened to our Pushing Daisies episode, it's actually one of my favorites because
it's so much fun.
Elizabeth made me watch way too many episodes of that, and I was deeply obsessed, and they should bring that show back. But anyways,
absolutely.
We'll be talking about The Fall on our next episode. Until then, don't forget to email us at theartofcostume@gmail.com and let us know what your one costume to rule them all is from Gladiator. Check us out on YouTube. There's some good stuff. It's really happening on YouTube. YouTube.com/@theartofcostume, Instagram @theartofcostumepod, TikTok @theartofcostume, if that wasn't clear already. And until then, Elizabeth, we need to keep unpacking and building our eyebrows, wink, wink, new studio.
I know.
So,
I'm excited.
thanks for listening, everyone.
We'll see you next time.